Welcome to A Healthy Dose, where we cover important issues affecting mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Julie Stautland, and today we're diving into the powerful benefits of physiotherapy. 4 out of 5 Canadians will experience back pain in their lifetime, and the economic burden of back pain alone tops $1.2 billion every year. Yet, physiotherapy is already saving our healthcare system hundreds of millions, reducing the combined burden of back pain, osteoarthritis, and heart disease by 232 million annually. It helps reduce pain, restore mobility, prevents surgery, and keeps Canadians active and independent longer. 15% of us access physio each year, and expanding that could save even more. To help us understand the many benefits of physiotherapy is our guest, Dr. Jackie White, a physiotherapist in Florida whose practice, Skyline Wellness Physiotherapy, specializes in treating aviation personnel. Jackie, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So I want to start off and ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What led you to become a physiotherapist? And what inspired you to specialize in the aviation?
Yeah, so I was drawn to physical therapy mainly for just how resilient the human body is. It's absolutely fascinating. The way that it
Mm.
adapts, recovers, it oftentimes surpasses what we even thought was possible. Think about how many people you know that have had some sort of injury and people are like, oh, they'll never be able to do that again. And yet they do. Um, So, one of the reasons why I treat a lot of orthopedics now, so deal with a lot of low back pain and things like that, and I love it. One of the reasons why I got into the aviation industry, though, was because it seemed like an industry that was just so untouched.
Mm.
They fly all the time, they get us where we need to go, but they don't necessarily have the support that they need. They're sitting in cockpits for long hours, they're sprinting through airports, and they needed somebody that could work with their schedule. So that's part of the reason why I created Skyline was I wanted to create something that captured the busy professional who's always on the go and just doesn't necessarily have the time to get into an actual clinical space.
I love the fact that you also mentioned too that the body is so resilient, and that's what drew you towards that. And I'm like, well, there's hope for me with my torn meniscus, and I want to get back into fencing eventually. But it's true. It's wonderful to hear because some people think that you've had an injury and you just it's just always going to be that way. But you're right. In so many cases, if we actually get the right kind of treatment, we can heal a lot on our own. So I want to go on and say, why did you establish Skyline Wellness? So you dealt with aviation, people that were flying and crew members, but then you went one step further and said, I'm just going to just go for it and make this my specialty. What gap in that industry did you see that needed filling, and what is your mission with this practice?
Yeah, so I was in a busy clinic and I started in Florida. There's so many pilots that are down here because
That's
Miami's
true.
close and a lot of there's just where I'm at, it's pilots galore. And what I
Mhm.
was finding was that, even though I was in that clinic from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, they couldn't get in. They're like, I'm on a trip
Oh.
Monday through Friday, or hey, like I've got to leave at this time and I'm not coming back until here. And they could not get in. So I my vision for what I've created was to create an online ecosystem that uses my brain and
Hmm.
my ability to program fitness and rehab strategies and give that to them that they can take into the hotel if they have, if they're going to a hotel gym, they've got that, or if they have access to an actual gym. I wanted them to be able to do their rehab while they're away from home. So when they come home, they can actually be with their families and not have to worry about, oh my gosh, I have to get to this doctor's appointment and go here and go there. I want them to just be able to come home and be present. So that's my vision, is to
That
help
is that
them.
is wonderful. So that is what's making Skyline Wellness so unique compared to traditional physiotherapy, because you've given them ways that they can actually take these exercises and be able to travel and still get the help they need. That is wonderful. So it's exciting, and so fun that you found something that really was needed and that you get to dive in and do it. So Stay with us. We'll dive deeper into how this works with people in the skies as well as on the ground right after the break. We're back with Jackie White of Skyline Wellness Physiotherapy. Jackie, let's give our audience a clear picture of what you do. So, for those unfamiliar, what exactly is physiotherapy? How does it differ from chiropractic care or massage therapy?
So, physiotherapy is it's a discipline where we're focused on restoring function. Someone comes in, has an injury, or they're interested in preventing an injury. It's our job to give you the tools in order to maintain or to restore the function of what has been lost. So, a lot of times we're breaking down larger functional movements, say like getting up and down out of a chair, and working those muscles in a specific way to make that process easier. Um, we utilize some manual techniques, but a lot of it is trying to just use your body's own natural systems to get you back to where you need to be.
In other words, it's kind of like not realizing that maybe you use certain muscles that you didn't even know existed uh, to be strengthened in order to do a regular movement. Is that what I'm understanding?
Exactly. A lot of times, after the first session, we go through life and we do, we walk around, we get up and down out of chairs, but we don't think about some of the accessory muscles that we need to support those larger movements, and they go forgotten. So once those muscles get forgotten, then the systems start kind of breaking down and we start having pain, things start getting harder. That's where we come in and we start to build up those accessory muscles so the body has more support.
I know for myself when I had to learn how to walk again after having both my ankles broken on purpose at 21, just standing and trying to vacuum, and I didn't realize how much strength I had lost and how much I needed to strengthen certain muscles just to be able to stand and push a vacuum cleaner. I thought this is ridiculous. How important it is to have the right exercises in order to regain that strength. So I know for me, it made a huge difference. What are some of the main areas or conditions that physiotherapy can effectively treat? You've talked about injuries, also preventatively. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so physical therapy goes is so broad. So we treat anything from classic low back pain due to what we call like radiculopathy, sciatica, spinal
Okay, what is that
stenosis.
word?
Which one? um, so radiculopathy is a lot of times it means you have radiating symptoms going down your legs.
Okay.
Whether that's numbness, tingling, things like that. Other things, neck pain,
Mm.
adhesive or frozen shoulder is another common one,
Yeah.
rotator cuff injuries, and those are just the orthopedic stuff. We get post-op, total joint replacements. Let's see, joint cleanouts, rotator cuff repairs, you name it, and we've
Wow.
probably worked on it. There's other sections where they're specific to like women's health, even men's health. Also thinking about spinal cord injuries after
Mm,
someone's had a stroke, trying to just help people walk again. Vertigo, that's another big one. Dizziness,
really? Hmm.
concussions, falls, prevention, even working on just preventative, strength training and deconditioning for folks.
So
Those
it
we
really
we
does
go
cover a
broad.
lot more areas than like I know some people just think, well, it's for sports injuries, right? But you've just
Right.
shared a whole laundry list there of things that are can be helped with physiotherapy. That's wonderful.
hmm Yeah,
In
there's
your
so many, which is very.
in your experience working with aviation professionals now, what are some of the most common issues you see and how does physio address the unique demands of that lifestyle? We have 1 minute.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of the things that I see from the aviation community is a lot of low back pain from being wedged up in those cockpits for long periods of time, even just sitting, even flight attendants and
Yeah.
those that are traveling, it's sitting for that prolonged period of time. The other thing that I see is a lot of cervical pain. if you think about
Huh.
it, there's so many controls that are kind of up. So they're looking up
Right.
and they're kind of, they're flicking their switches and things like that. And they're in those positions for extended periods of time. So we see a lot of just inefficiencies that the body creates because of those prolonged positions.
It's clear physiotherapy is so broader, much broader than many realize. Coming up, we'll tackle one of the biggest silent threats to pilots and desk workers alike. Stay with us. There's a phrase gaining traction: sitting is the new smoking. Jackie, is that accurate? And why should we pay attention?
Yeah, so a super accurate statement. If you think about it, so many of our jobs recently have changed from, going into an office to now a lot of us are working from home. So we're sitting behind desks for longer periods of time. We're becoming a much more technologically driven society.
Yeah.
So with that, there's pros and cons. It's really nice to be able to work from home. But with that, we're starting to see, increased cardiovascular changes, like a lot more
Mm,
deconditioning, a lot more neck issues, even just a decrease in strength and some cognitive decline is actually being
really?
seen with some of recent studies that are coming out, which is really interesting to see how all that kind of plays together.
Absolutely. When you think about how movement and proper movement actually affects our brain as well. Interesting. So that's part of the
Mhm.
science about how health risks of prolonged sitting, particularly for pilots and desk workers who spend hours in the cockpit. So, how does extended sitting affect the body's posture, the muscles, circulation, and as you mentioned on the brain, even mental focus? Let's break that down.
Yeah, so when we sit for prolonged periods of time, we're in that seated position. At the front of our bodies, we have what's called our hip flexors. So they help to actually raise and lower the leg. When we're sitting, we notice those start to get tighter because they're
Mm.
no longer lengthened as they would be when we're standing. We also notice that our glutes start to get kind of sleepy. They don't turn on when we need them to. So um,
Sleepy. I like how
that
you use that.
Right. So then what ends up happening is that that low back kind of takes on a little bit more
Mm,
because it doesn't necessarily have the supporting structures that it needs. In addition to that, from sitting, we also see from a posture standpoint, people start to kind of get into one of these positions, right? So the shoulders
mm,
round, the head comes forward, we start to notice a lot more kind of upper back tightness, stiffness. You get kind of like that classic kind of hump that a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want that." But
mhm,
especially from holding cell phones for longer periods of time, if you think about it, you're looking down, you're rounding. Even some of our desktops are not necessarily set up as ergonomically as they should be. So when we
mm.
get into these positions that we're sitting in for a long period of time and it's not necessarily great from a posture standpoint, our bodies from a physiologic standpoint is having to work a heck of a lot harder to try to keep us upright. Therefore, the energy that it's expending is not necessarily allowing us to critically think as much. So thinking about pilots, people that have to make quick decisions,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They have this sort of mental fatigue because the muscles are tired, because the brain is
Mm.
having to utilize all its resources to try to keep us in this one position. So everything gets tired, and that affects our cognitive function as well and our
I
decision
guess that
making.
that would be the same for someone sitting at a desk too, who's working on a really important document, and yet they've been sitting there for so long, they are now having a hard time focusing on the important material they're supposed to be working on, something like that as well.
100%. 100%.
I always find it so interesting how I've done so many shows, but when we understand that we aren't just an arm or a leg, that everything's connected and that we need to take care of our whole body, mind, and soul, that we'll feel so much better. Every show just confirms that over and over again for me. So I want to ask you, how can physiotherapy help not just treat, but counteract these effects for anyone who sits all day, whether they're flying or they're in an office or driving? I know for myself that if I have a really long trip driving, that really takes a toll.
Yeah. So a lot of times, what I tell people to do is if you're sitting in an office space, right? If your
Hmm.
desk, you normally have your trash can right by your desk, right? Sometimes I'll tell folks, put your desk on the other side of the room. So every time you need to throw something away, you actually have to physically get yourself up out of the chair, walk to the other side of your office, and go put it down. That now you've stood up, right? You've kind of increased the blood flow a little bit, and then you can come back, and it kind of gives you a second to also let your eyes rest and get rid of that screen time for just a brief moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Even
That's a really good trick because it's not like it takes a lot of time, and yet it is something for the body. That's a good trick.
Right, 100%. I love it. And even in the cockpit, like sometimes I'll tell folks, I'll have them do kind of micro movements, whether that's shoulder rolls, neck rolls,
Mm.
just, whether they're doing kind of like scap squeezes, even just going up and down on their tippy toes, just little
Mhm.
things, makes a big difference.
All right, well, stay with us. When we come back, we'll talk about prevention. Jackie, we've covered the problems. Now let's focus on solutions. And we started to touch on that just before the break. So you gave a couple of tips. What are the best preventative strategies people in aviation or sedentary jobs can use to avoid pain and injury before they even start?
So a lot of us are actually we're already walking, after work and everything. But one thing that I find that we forget is resistive training. Whether that's using
Ah.
light resistance bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, I don't necessarily barbells. Like, I mean, I personally love a good barbell workout, but it's not the only thing that I do. So any sort of cross training that people can do is super important and a great way to prevent so many issues before you even have to get to me.
Yeah, I think that's so important that people realize that movement of some sort, whether it's walking or I personally also like weight training, that it just sets a foundation at least for whatever you may be having to deal with that's going to have you sitting for a very long time. Are there simple airplane, or let's say you're sitting on the airplane, what can you do while you're sitting on that airplane? And I know, you're crammed in your seats. Let's say not just pilots, but just even as a passenger, or desk friendly exercises, like you mentioned with the garbage can, or habits you recommend that viewers can adopt immediately.
Yeah, so one of the things that I will always tell people is before your flight, take a walk. Most people are just kind of hanging out in the terminal, they're
That's
waiting to
true.
hop on the plane. Take
Mm.
that walk, get the blood flowing, do a couple of calf raises before you even get on the plane. And
Mm.
then once you're kind of sitting, you're getting comfortable, throughout the flight, especially if it's a longer flight, kind of just roll your shoulders, do some of those like, just side to side kind of neck mobility things. You can even do just calf raises while you're sitting there.
Mm.
All those micro movements help to keep the blood flowing and help us to combat some of the alternative things that happen to the body at those higher altitudes.
All right. Yeah, that's the other thing you don't think about too. I mean, when you specializing with pilots, but as passengers, the body responds differently in the air, and we need to take that in consideration as well, right?
100%. Because if we don't, what we find is that, and what I see a lot of times too in folks that they're traveling quite frequently, they're tired when they come in to see me or when we
Yeah.
hop on a phone call. And they're like, man, I just want to get some sleep. So it's like those little micro movements, once they start adding those in, they go, oh, I don't feel as tired when I get to my location, which is great to see that those changes happening.
Absolutely. What role does education and awareness play? What do you hope viewers take away from today's conversation?
The biggest thing that I hope that folks take away from just this conversation in general is that while, yes, walking is great, resistive training is also super important. Anything that we can do on the front end of our health will help to affect us later on in life. So, even just the
Mm.
decision to go out today and take a 15-minute walk, if you haven't been walking, that will benefit you 5, 10 years from now in your wellness
Mm.
journey and help to keep you moving because movement is medicine. And the more that we move, the better our body feels.
I love that. Movement is medicine. Very important. Okay, so how can someone get started with a physiotherapist if they're experiencing discomfort or just want to optimize their movement? Is it just is there a checklist that they should be looking for when they're looking for a physiotherapist?
Yeah, so when you are looking for a physiotherapist, it is definitely a partnership. And so I always tell folks it's almost like you're kind of dating for a while, but it's like this is like your life, it's like your life term partner. So, you want someone that you feel comfortable talking to and bringing challenges to, whether that's, hey, I'm having issues being able to pick up my kid when I get home, or hey, I'm
Right.
finding that it's like really tired. All the good and the bad that come with that. You want to find someone that kind of aligns with you as well. If you have someone that just tells you that you need to lay down, do all these table exercises, and that's it, and there is no functional programming like getting up and sitting down and things like that, then we want to find someone that is going to give you all those functional tasks because that's prepares you for life.
Good advice. Jackie, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me and educating us on physiotherapy.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Physiotherapy isn't just about treating pain, it's about reclaiming your mobility, preventing surgery, and staying active and independent. Thanks for joining us on A Healthy Dose.